Hello and welcome, I'm Riz Khan. A seemingly innocent family photograph released to mark Mother's Day in the UK this month sparked a row which dominated news headlines and social media around the world. The photographer was William, Britain's Prince of Wales, and it was edited by his wife, Princess Catherine, using her Photoshop skills. But the changes were spotted by news agencies and individuals alike, renewing discussions about fake photography versus innocent or well-intended photo tinkering. Well, the risks associated with doctored pictures are rapidly increasing and with potentially far more serious consequences. To address these risks, a specialist in technology and security engineering has created a system to verify images. Cambridge University researcher Dr. Mansoor Ahmed Rengers says the company he founded, OpenOrigins, provides an invaluable tool to the news industry, insurance companies and beyond when it comes to confirming the truth behind an image. Mansoor, thanks very much for your time. Now, this is going to be a particularly fascinating conversation because I think many people don't realize where we are in this faking of images and changing evidence, changing the perception people have of what is real and what is not. How big is the problem?
It's massive. I think it is the biggest problem that we have in communications today. The core problem here, obviously, is that photos and videos are losing their evidentiary value. It used to be the case that there was a qualitative difference between someone saying something happened versus someone having a photo of something happening. That's increasingly not the case. Today, I would say that we're about 80% of the way to photos being just as easily fabricated as words, and within about 24 months, we'll be there.
So going through the sequence, in the old days, someone gave you their word or someone said something, if you trusted them, you believed them. Then photos were proof that what they were saying was correct. Then photos could be fixed a bit, and the word used to be photoshopped because of Adobe's brand, and that people would use that, but that would take skill to do, correct? Now AI can do it?
Yeah, it's effectively making you a Photoshop expert with unlimited time on your hands while not costing you any time or money.
And what you're saying is essentially now it's gone beyond humans being able to distinguish.
That's right. I spend most of my day looking at these photographs and they fool me sometimes. So I wouldn't place a lot of confidence in just a random person being able to distinguish between a synthetic version of a photo versus a real one.
And you call them synthetic images, correct?
Yes.
Instead of fake photos.
Yeah, because there is nothing that came from a camera sensor. It is purely generated in the imaginations of an AI model, as opposed to a Photoshop image, which might have been taken by a real camera sensor and then modified in some way.
Can computers tell them apart, even if humans can't?
There are some models that have a bit of a flaky performance. I think the last comparison that I saw, the best models had a performance of about 72%, right? So they might be able to tell them apart. They might have some sort of a confidence interval, but year on year, the trend is that even automated systems are failing. And this 24-month timeline that I mentioned, it's not just for humans. I think in 24 months, even AI will not be able to distinguish synthetic images from real images.
That's terrifying, actually. We'll talk about the consequences by starting with a look at one image. So, for example, this first image, if we look at it, it's Donald Trump being arrested, yes, which never actually happened, like this anyway. So what could be the potential issue here?
Well, first of all, just at a glance, and especially if you're looking at it on some sort of social media platform, you don't have a very high resolution image, this looks very convincing. And it did convince a lot of people. It went viral on Twitter. You can imagine that this, combined with a few malicious actors who are motivated to, let's say, corrupt the political system, could use this to start an uprising. And maybe in the case of Donald Trump, there was enough corroboration.
Oh, I see.
Corroboration. There were enough people looking at his account. There were enough people knowing his whereabouts that we could still be like, this looks fishy. This shouldn't have happened. But imagine this happening to a lesser politician or in a jurisdiction where they don't have as good of a media coverage, then things get even more tricky.
I guess with the volume of people, especially with the kind of issue with Donald Trump having a big following, the number of people looking at things, there would be that kind of almost authentication en masse, correct? Yes. Okay, so that's one thing. This next image is going to be very interesting as well. So this is where the Pentagon seemingly was attacked. The US's Defense Department, their military infrastructure, everything being attacked.
Yes.
Tell me about this image.
Yeah, so this was created, I think, using Midjourney, which is one of these synthetic image creation tools. Someone posted it on Twitter. A few news wires picked it up. It was covered by a few news organizations. I saw one Indian news channel covering it. And that had a significant impact on the stock market prices.
So it actually had a real world effect on people's lives through finance and everything.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. And again, is this not something that people could like verify quickly? Just the reaction of the markets, I guess, is going to be very quick because they want to be ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I think we're in this weird space where we still believe photos. Right? If I see a photo of something, I just instinctively believe it. It changes my perception of the thing. I think as these cases keep happening more and more, we might start losing that faith, that collective faith in photos. But until that point happens, I think this is just going to keep happening.
The next image is an interesting one because it's kind of fun, and yet it has its consequences. The Pope in a puffer jacket. Tell me about this one.
I actually was fooled by this one. The other two, I was quite proud at having spotted it. This one actually fooled me. You know, people who spent a lot of time looking at photos and videos got fooled by this one. It's a funny photo, and it's not, I guess, so controversial that I'm immediately skeptical. I just thought it was an interesting fashion choice. Yeah.
The Pope is suddenly trendy.
Yeah, exactly.
But it does show, again, the level of veracity. Yes. You know, there are some things that are obviously big world consequences and people are going to react on them. Here, they're just maybe having a laugh or at least, you know, amused. Let me talk about video, though, because video was much more difficult to do, but it's changed. Taylor Swift, having been faked into a video that had more than 50 million views before it was taken down, of her put into a pornographic situation. Talk about that and the consequences.
Unfortunately, this is not a new situation. So deep fake, non-consensual pornography has existed for about 3-4 years at this point. Obviously, it affecting Taylor Swift has made this a much bigger issue and given it a lot more visibility. But I remember reading about cases of high school girls having this kind of deep fake pornography made of them without their consent. And the psychological trauma that it caused to those girls is immense. It is obviously also such a big reputational risk to anyone who has any sort of public persona. You can't keep fighting this fight. You can't keep going and disproving every single deep fake that exists of you. So right now, all Taylor Swift or anyone in her boat can do is just live with it.
Well, I understand that the US government, and I think it's even gone up to the UN level, are looking for some kind of regulation, some kind of standards, some kind of consequences for people who do this. Where are we in that regulatory space?
There seems to be a wide variety of proposals on the table. And I think some of them have a better chance of working than not. One stream that you could go down on is, you say, if you're an AI company that's putting out these models, then you need to watermark every image that you put out. I doubt the efficacy of that. It is easy for me to just take a screenshot of a fake photo, remove the watermark, and then spread that around. The second route that you can go down is you can start demanding that news organizations or any public-facing organization needs to start proving their images, right? So we're not trying to stop the bad things from happening, but we're forcing the good guys to prove that they're doing good things.
That only dilutes, it doesn't stop.
It does not stop, but the meta or the macro level change that we're trying to drive here is that people just stop trusting photos unless there is a reason to trust them, right? So unless a news organization can prove that this photo was captured securely using some sort of secure sourcing technology, you shouldn't be trusting that photo. And that is the sort of stream that I'm in favor of, rather than trying to label fake photos.
Do you believe that if people become much more aware of the fact that faking video and photos is so much easier, that they should think twice? Do you think the public would reach a better level of education rather than blindly believing? Because they say human nature is such that we trust fake more than we trust reality.
It's a good question. I worry about the intersection of these fake photos and filter bubbles. If you get a bunch of fake content that is reaffirming your views, you're unlikely to question the fakeness of that content. So I think it can go in two ways, right? I think it depends a lot on how the platforms enforce it, the social media platforms, content platforms, but also news organizations, how they introduce this idea of verified photos versus fake photos. If we take a hands-off approach to this, I worry that these filter bubbles will keep getting deeper and deeper, and we'll just see a more divided society.
Where does audio come into this view? Because now there's a lot of talk about AI cloning of voices, and the scams are quite ridiculous. I mean, very effective too.
Yeah, audio is already at a point where I would say it is fundamentally impossible to distinguish between a synthetic voice versus a real voice. We've already crossed that inflection point, which we'll reach with photos in 24 months.
This has all happened so quickly.
It did. And audio is also quite tricky because even if you have some sort of a microphone that you trust completely, right? Like anything coming from this microphone we'll believe. Even if you have that, someone can just take a recording of my voice, fake it in some way, and then play it over a speaker, and record it using that trusted microphone. The trusted microphone can't tell the difference between my vocal cords versus a speaker, right? So that is actually a very, very tricky problem to solve, and I'm afraid that we will probably never have a good solution for this.
Wow. Well, let's talk about how you got into this space. You're, as this next slide shows, the logo of your company. You call yourself OpenOrigins.
That's right.
What got you into this space, and what were you hoping to do with it?
Yeah, before I started OpenOrigins, I was an academic. I was doing my PhD, then my postdoc at Cambridge. I've been in the disinformation space for a long time. My PhD was in security engineering. When I started my PhD was when deepfakes were first published about. So this is early 2016, 2017. And immediately alarm bells started ringing in my head. Back then, everyone was thinking about all the fun use cases for deepfakes, but I could immediately see that this ends in disinformation. So we started working on what is now called a deepfake detection tool, just an AI model that can tell whether something is a deepfake or not. But even as I was making that program, I realized that this was not sustainable. The moment we made this detection tool, it was going to be used to make a better generator, right? So our own tools were going to be turned against us. Wow. And that's exactly what happened. And we've seen this arms race continuing over the last 5-6 years to the point where now detection is basically a coin toss. So back in 2017, when I realized this was not sustainable, I decided I'm not going to waste my time trying to catch the bad guys doing bad things, as I mentioned. I'm going to focus my efforts on allowing the honest creators, honest editors to prove their work. So we published a bunch of research, went to a few conferences, and then that's where we hit the limits of academia. Academia is very well engineered for creating new ideas, for generating or pushing the edges of technology, but not for deploying a product that people use.
Right.
So that's when I decided to leave academia and started OpenOrigins to turn that research into a product that people can actually use.
So tell me, well, first, who would use it?
Yes. I think eventually everyone. As I said, society-wide, we're going to lose trust in photos. So everyone is going to have to start proving their photos. Right now, a few verticals care about it. News organizations especially care about it. Another vertical that cares about is insurance. If you have some sort of a car insurance, you can start making fraudulent claims now because you can just generate fake photos of damage to your car. Things like CCTV camera manufacturers. All of these verticals are probably our early users, but we see a pathway to this being an internet-wide solution.
And a global one at that.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me how it works.
Yeah, so it might be helpful to have sort of an illustrative image. So here we have got the Pope in his puffer jacket again. And this is basically to show if this photo wasn't securely sourced, it wasn't sourced using some sort of a trusted camera, we don't trust it. And that's what we're saying there. We did not verify this uploaded file. As opposed to this, you could have a photoshopped image, right? So this is a real image of a horse that has been turned into a unicorn.
Yeah.
Again, we say the same thing that, hey, we could not verify this file. However, we do know that there is a verified file, a file that was sourced from an app that is trusted on a trusted phone that we have stored on our blockchain. And that's what it's showing there. Now, if you click on that button,
it shows you the original.
It will show you the original. It will also show you all the details about that, right? Like we know what camera was used, exactly which lens was used, where on the blockchain you can go and validate it yourself. In the end, we don't want to be the gatekeepers of trust. We want everyone to be able to go and make up their own minds. And that's why the blockchain is really important. It's an open database that anyone can go and check.
So apart from the little kids that'll be crying, the ones who loved unicorns who discovered it's a fake, the effect is that you can show there is the original picture.
Yes.
And then verify that in a way that says, okay, this was the original. Now, yeah. And I know I asked you this in the past when we first spoke. Mm-hmm. if I was taking and I do this, if I take a picture and let's say someone's more in silhouette, yes. I want to lighten them up, brighten them up.
Yes.
I'm not altering the concept of the photo in any way. I'm not changing the perspective people might have, except they can see it clearer.
Yeah.
Am I faking it?
I don't think that that is a technological question, right? I think it is, in the end, up to the consumer of the content to make up their own minds.
So just creative in this sense.
Yeah, so our approach to this is we will capture the raw image, the first image that you had. We'll put effectively a summary of that image, what we call a hash of that image on the blockchain. And then after you've modified it, we'll note down the modifications you've made. We'll say, okay, Riz performed some color corrections. It changed from this to this. And then we'll put those modifications on the blockchain as well. So that when you go on the blockchain, you don't just see the final image. You see, oh, this is the final image, but Riz did these changes to it. And then as the consumer, you can make up your own mind whether you want to trust that or not.
So this, in say, when I say real world situations, such as the news industry, someone sends a picture of what they claim is a soldier shooting a civilian.
Sure.
And what you can do is verify it by going to the original picture, correct?
Yes. If we go to the next image, just because you mentioned a war zone, one of the critical issues there is also location. Right? Like you want to make sure that this was actually taken in the place where it is, where they say it was. And that's part of the thing that we do. In this case, you can see that this image was taken exactly somewhere near Blackheath in London. And this information was corroborated using GPS, using all the Wi-Fi signals around it, using mobile towers. Right? So it is really, really hard for someone to fake. Yeah. So in this example, what we would do is we would not only give you the context of these are the transformations that were performed, but also that this was the time and place at which it was taken.
Wow, so it's pretty intense. The information is available.
Yes.
Can anyone scrub that data? Can they manipulate that data?
That's the beauty of the blockchain. Anything that's put on the blockchain is effectively written in stone. It is impossible for someone to go back and to rewrite the history on the blockchain. So the worst case that I can imagine is someone takes one of these photos, edits it, and then sends it over WhatsApp, right? Now, the person receiving on the other end can always go to our website, upload it, and then see, oh, this has been edited, and therefore I shouldn't trust it. But the worst case would be that someone doesn't do that, right? Like people don't go and actively try to verify it. Right. And this is where we want more and more platforms to come on board so that this verification happens by default.
So for a news industry, they've got this picture, rather than putting it out there and perhaps creating an adverse reaction among the public who believe this has really happened. Mm-hmm. For example, a government soldier or government officer doing something illegitimate or perhaps dangerous for the community. They won't just go and react because they can see it's been
exactly.
faked. The thing about it, though, is we're seeing this already quite a lot. And again, I was saying people tend to want to believe what they want to believe. We saw it with Russian military activity in Ukraine. Sometimes the images were taken from past conflicts, and there's a lot of faking.
There was even a deepfake of Zelensky apparently surrendering to Russian forces that went viral among frontline forces in Ukraine. Who knows how many people surrendered after watching that video. So yeah, this is having real world impacts. The other, I think, less talked about facet of this whole disinformation wave is that this doesn't just affect content being created today, it also affects our trust in historical content, right? So why should we trust CNN's version of Obama's speech from 2015 when there are 100 different versions of this being synthetically created and being spread over Twitter? Like, how does CNN prove to us that their own database has not been compromised with synthetic content? So we also need to start thinking about how do we retroactively protect all of the cultural history that we have and preserve it.
So it's true, it's even with because a lot of archive reference to give perspective, sometimes historical perspective, that's being faked as well.
Exactly.
That's amazing. So I know, for example, they had the US Vice President Kamala Harris saying that 90% of the people in hospitals had been vaccinated when actually she had said they had not been vaccinated. This kind of thing obviously is having an impact on real world situations.
Yes.
So apart from a situation such as politicians and so on and news industries, it affects individuals. So how could what you do be used by an individual?
Yeah, so let's imagine that you're someone on the ground and something newsworthy has happened. And you want to be able to prove that what you're seeing is actually what has happened.
For example, a citizen journalist perspective.
For example, a citizen journalist. Or even, as we said, in insurance case, right? You've actually got car damage. You're not trying to fake it. You want your claim to be processed quickly, all right? So in that case, what we've got is what we call an SDK. It's a mobile component of an app.
Okay.
Right? So it can be embedded into an existing app, or you can use one of our existing apps.
We'll see the next slide, yeah.
Yeah, if you go to the next slide. This is what it actually looks like. You've got the camera icon, you just click a camera. In this case, our head of engineering took a photo of this pretty little statue. You can see that it says exactly when it was taken. If you go to the next slide, it will show you all of the proof information, the device on which it was captured, the lens that it was taken on, when it was uploaded to the blockchain, all of the details that we talked about. But the crucial thing here is that we didn't use any specialized equipment. We weren't using some fancy camera. We were just using an iPhone. We just took a photo within an app. So from the user perspective, the workflow is exactly the same as taking a normal photo, except that without you even knowing it, we've proven that it is a real photo.
What happens if they're using, well, if they're old school, they're using an old camera?
Sure. So what you would do is you would connect your DSLR camera to your iPhone either via Wi-Fi or via a cable or an Android phone. And then the phone itself acts as the trust bridge between the blockchain and your camera. Right? So your camera doesn't connect directly to the internet, but your phone can. And your phone is validating that the things coming from your camera can be trusted.
So you're actively doing this. You want to show people that this is authentic.
Exactly. One critical thing about this, if you go to the last slide, is that even if you have a completely trusted camera, an easy way to cheat such a system is you take a photo, you edit it, you put it on a screen, and then you take a photo of the edited screen.
Picture of a picture.
Picture of a picture. In this case, we're preventing that. So what you're seeing here is a depth photo. So you can see that this statue is in front of a wall. You can see these dots trailing back behind it. You can see that there is a flat surface behind it because there's a straight line there. And this helps us prove that something has real curvature. So if I see a photo of a face, but it has no depth, then I know it's a picture of picture. And therefore, you won't be able to cheat the system.
That's amazing. So it's sensing almost like the 3D aspect of it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
What's the next step for you guys? How does, I mean, you've signed already with a major news broadcaster.
That's right. Yeah, we recently closed a contract with a large news organization. They have a massive archive of video content dating back decades. We're in conversations with a couple of other major news organizations and news wires. Our focus is on news right now because we see the amount of disinformation spreading, and we don't need to educate the client. You are in the news industry, you are very well aware of this problem. Over the next 12 months, we do see ourselves expanding to other verticals, insurance being the obvious next step, where the increase in fraud makes the case for us. And as I said, I think in the next 24 months, we are going to reach a point where photos are just not trusted by default. So we will need something like this for us to be able to trust photos and believe stories again.
We're at a space in the news cycle. I mean, it always goes through its ups and downs, but we've got major issues going on. We've got Israel, Gaza, we've got Russia, Ukraine, as well as a whole host of other things. So we're at a stage where verification is very important, I guess, because information spreads so quickly,
Yes.
globally.
Yes.
So the dangers are really there, correct?
That's right. And I think that's why reactive measures don't work. Right? We can't just rely on fact checkers. We can't just rely on some sort of AI algorithm to look at viral stories and to have some people then go and check it, because it's too slow. The information has already spread. It has already affected the opinions of millions of people by the time these systems catch up. We need to be proactive about this. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make people proactively prove their stories before people start believing them.
Is there any way to automate what you do so that people don't have to go through the process?
Yeah, and I think that's where integration comes in, right? So what we would love to see is for our SDK to be embedded into a platform. So the obvious example for this is something like Facebook. Instead of taking a photo within the Facebook app, which could be faked, you take the photo within the Facebook app, and without you even knowing it, they are using OpenOrigins technology to prove the photo before it gets broadcast to your audience.
So essentially, when it comes down to it, it's like a plugin, if that's the right terminology, correct?
That's right, yeah. An SDK is a fancy word for a plugin. We want to be as invisible as possible to some degree. We don't want you to have to use another app. We don't want you to have extra steps in your already busy life. We want this to be integrated into as many tools that you already use so that your stories can be proven by default.
So platforms really should be engaging and doing this. Is there any issue of privacy, which has always become a big question nowadays?
Yeah, so the way we've architected the solution, it's up to the user to determine how much of the information gets exposed. as you might have seen in some of the photos that I showed, some of our users chose not to expose their location data, for example, whereas others did. So in that case, we will just say we can't verify the location. We will not put it on the blockchain. But if you do want to show it, then we can prove it for you.
So this is almost like an optional menu for people to verify, and if they really need the authenticity, they should give you everything.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So if it's that crucial, they could do that. Do you see this advancing technologically in any way in the coming months or years?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of compatibility that we need to work on. We want to support as many cameras as possible. So that includes your DSLRs, your iPhones, your Androids, but also things like CCTV cameras. It's an industry that's in a weird way decades behind where it should be from a security point of view, and we would love for this to be the impetus for them to get on board. There's also a lot of work that needs to be done to scale this infrastructure to the internet. We create billions, if not trillions of images every day. How do we make sure that we can still expose all of this proof information to everyone? That's a really hard engineering challenge.
I realize there's a potential. It sounds like a strange tangent, but people put fake pictures of themselves on dating sites, which have become a huge issue.
Yes. Catfishing.
Oh, right. So then how would this, could this really be a tool for fixing that?
Yeah, there's nothing stopping Tinder from putting a tool like ours in there to make sure that you can only upload real photos. Whether they want to do it or not is a different question, because their engagement numbers might go down because there are less pretty people on the platform.
And you'll be blamed for many more lonely people around.
Exactly.
Right. So in terms of your being able to persuade others like platforms of how valuable this is, what sort of challenges do you face?
A lot of it is education. As I mentioned, we've started with the news organizations because they are already educated on the problem. Then we just need to educate them on the solution. But when we've spoken to rather older industries or more traditional industries, let's say like infrastructure monitoring, these companies that monitor whether the electricity lines have been maintained or not, there is already a problem there. There is a lot of fraud that happens, but we first need to educate them on the problem, and then we need to educate them on the fact that this is the right solution. So there's definitely that. The second thing is that I think we have to be careful about taking the right steps, right? So we can't go directly to a Twitter or a Facebook and have it be adopted by billions of people before it has been thoroughly tested by smaller use cases, more pointed use cases. So as we go from news to insurance, we will have to do this validation again because each industry has slightly different needs. Right. So for example, with insurance, what they really care about is having really, really good depth data, because they can use the depth data to do cost estimation. If they can see that, oh, this bump in your bumper is like 3 inches deep versus 6 inches deep, they can give a better estimation of this is how much it should cost you.
That's fascinating.
News organizations obviously don't care about that. So we do need to tailor make our product a little bit to whatever vertical we're selling to.
Big challenge often for tech companies is keeping up with the advances in technology. Sure. What challenges do you face?
In a weird way, we are in the ecosystem of trust, right? So we do need to establish credibility. Part of it comes from our technical credentials, but it's also about having worked with other established players in the space. We can't be selling trust if we are not trusted ourselves.
What about the pace of the actual technology itself? Are you able to, I mean, the software, the programming and stuff, are you able to advance that quickly?
I think one of the beauties of what we're doing is that we're not involved in the arms race, right? We don't care how sophisticated AI gets, because in the end, ours is not an AI technology. It's, if anything, an anti-AI technology. We've built a fireproof house. We're not going around putting out fires. We're just saying everything in this house cannot be touched by fire.
Interesting thing just to end on. I know when I first said to you before the interview, we would talk a little bit about AI. You said, well, everything is AI nowadays. So it's probably a pointless discussion.
This is true, yeah. I mean, we found a nice marketing gimmick to sell new services, so everything is AI these days.
Mansoor, I know this isn't the last conversation we'll have, so thank you very much for your time.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.